So there's a parish in Denver, Colorado that is facing a crisis. What do you do when a large chunk of the congregation are modernist-type Catholics, and a traditionalist priest takes over the parish? We all know that priests come in all shapes and sizes. You've got your Father James Martin types, and then you've got your Bishop Joseph Strickland types, who have very different styles. So this parish was clearly used to a kinder, gentler priest until Father Daniel Ciucci arrived. Since his arrival, parishioners have circulated a petition that has now garnered 750 signatures from within the parish community. They're appealing to Archbishop Samuel Akia, asking him to intervene in the practices of Daniel Ciucci. So what exactly are the faithful of this church bristling about? Some parishioners have criticized his preaching style as fire and brimstone and overly dogmatic, accusing him of focusing heavily on topics like heaven and hell, which they claim has eroded the welcoming community spirit of the parish. The petition has described a loss of psychological safety that has eroded over the 4 years of Ciucci's leadership. Parish collections have fallen to 25% of what they were before he was installed as priest. Now, I think this is a problem that is going to keep cropping up. There are large congregations out there, many made up of the baby boomer generation, who grew up on the reforms of the Second Vatican Council. They're a little bit more used to that modernist style that's ever present among priests of that era. However, young men that are in the seminary today tend to have a different way of viewing things. A major survey conducted by the Catholic Project at the Catholic University of America, released in November of 2023, found that priests in the United States, particularly younger ones and those recently ordained, are increasingly identifying as theologically conservative and orthodox. The survey revealed that 85% of priests ordained after 2020 describe themselves as conservative or orthodox, or very conservative and very orthodox theologically, with only 14% identifying as middle of the road and none as very progressive. In contrast, nearly 70% of priests ordained in the mid to late 1960s identified as somewhat or very progressive, showing a significant decline in progressive ideology among newer cohorts. I think what we're finding is a generational shift between older and younger in what they're looking for in the Catholic Church. The older generations might prefer the modern Mass that they grew up with, while younger people are flocking to the smells and bells, the Latin Mass, and Catholic voices with the more traditional style. It's no coincidence that Dr. Taylor Marshall has the largest following of any layman on YouTube. I've been saying for a while now that this shift to traditionalism may help the Church. Only the Catholic Church can boast a 2,000-year history. Only the Catholic Church can claim to be the church founded by Jesus Christ. We need to embrace that, and I think we'll find beauty come back to our parishes and a whole new crop of young men ready to serve Christ and lead their flock. Okay, so the next story I wanted to cover was regarding the Association of U.S. Catholic Priests and how they're in the news yet again. Now, the priests that make up this organization are by no means mainstream. For instance, they were denied participation in the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops' Eucharistic Congress last year. However, they do have influence on Catholic prelates that do have sway within the church. Cardinal Blaise Cupich has been a presenter at their annual assembly. Cardinal Wilton Gregory has been a speaker at their gatherings. Cardinal Robert McElroy was the keynote speaker at their 2018 assembly. And Archbishop John Wester of Santa Fe serves as the liaison between the AUSCP and the United States Conference of Bishops. And there's plenty more that I don't have time to list. So here's what happened. Leaked audio has just come out that breaks down some pretty strange conversations that occurred during the AUSCP's annual retreat. One of the priests in attendance, who's not identified, suggested that ignoring sexual desire can lead people to act out, including through violence and perhaps even mass casualty events. The retreat leader, Father Rollheiser, agreed with this notion and added on that self-gratification is the better option over the repression that can lead to violence. He also went on about how fornication, in most cases, is actually not sinful. He claims that teens who are engaging in intimacy on this level are actually not practicing sin because they are mostly unaware of what they're doing. That's an awfully generous take. Father Rollheiser also stated that it's okay to take communion when in a state of mortal sin because if they really want to take communion, then they're likely not actually in a state of mortal sin. As you can see, these are some pretty heterodox views. Your first instinct might be just to write these guys off as kooks and move on, but the problem is the AUSCP actually has some sway on the mainstream Catholic Church. I just covered another story out of the Archdiocese of Detroit from about 2 weeks ago. Bishop Weisenberger has just promoted Father David Burismeyer to the position of diocesan ombudsman, where he'll oversee internal disputes between pastoral staff. And Father Burismeyer actually has some ties to the AUSCP. Not only has he donated to the organization on multiple occasions, but he worked with the organization to publish a letter in support of 3 priests who were attempting to ordain women. Like I said earlier, we'll always have Catholics, even priests, that have heretical views. But the fact that they're being elevated within the church should give some cause for concern. We saw the same thing with Father James Martin, who has some unorthodox views on same-sex relations. It was reported that during the Francis pontificate, Martin enjoyed regular correspondence with the Pope, a position of great influence. I don't always want to focus on these negative stories, but we need to bring attention to them, and they're happening all the time. I think it's very much the case that the Catholic Church faces more of a threat from forces within the Church than external forces that are working against it. Now, speaking of the Archdiocese of Detroit, there was just a rally in support of bringing back the Latin Mass outside of the cathedral in Detroit. The city and surrounding area have been just about as hard hit as anywhere when it comes to Latin Mass closures after Pope Francis's Traditionalist Custodes. In 2022, there were 28 parishes around the Archdiocese in which a person could attend the Latin Mass. Today, only 4. One of the protesters commented, quote, "Our hope is that through our prayers, God's grace will help Archbishop Weisenberger see it from our point of view, the ones trying to raise the future of the Church, future priests and religious sisters, and allow for more masses in the extraordinary form. Here's the problem. The Archbishop is going to see this protest and just throw up his hands in the air. He'll say that his hands are tied and that he's just complying with Traditionis Custodes. We need the Vatican to address this. I understand the Pope works on his own time, but every week that passes is another TLM community destroyed, another family that has to drive 2 hours to attend the liturgy of their grandfathers. I pray for these communities." Okay, one more strange story. At Grand Valley State University in West Michigan, there's outrage over blasphemous images of the Virgin Mary that have been displayed on campus. The piece was originally displayed in the Student Center and was purchased from an alumni for $1,800. So the school paid to put this up. After initial outcry, it was taken down, but has now been displayed in the provost's office. So what's wrong with the painting? Well, first off, there's randomly a firearm painted onto the image on the right. Then there are activist slogans written all over the place, including the word trans, homophobia is lethal, and the F slur written in Spanish. Like I've said before, there's always going to be people out there that want to paint stuff like this, but the real danger lies in the fact that our institutions are enabling and endorsing it. That's why this story needs attention. And of course, we'd never see the desecration of images of Allah or Muhammad. The blasphemy train only goes one way. Thanks for watching, and if you want to see more Catholic content like this, make sure to like and subscribe.